reminder of that primordial covenant that we'd already taken with him before he even sent us down. And so the book of Allah is there to remind us of those things that are actually deeply embedded in us as human beings. And so the actual word dhikr in Arabic means to remember, to repeat something again and again. And the root word for dhikr actually in Arabic has a rather inappropriate term, which I won't use this evening, but it comes from the male private parts. And the idea is that when you use the word dhikr, and they say that it's if someone sort of gets injured in a sensitive part of their body, they're never going to forget. And so that's the notion of dhikr. That's why it has that word which is linked to that notion. Dhikr has the same root word for a male private part in Arabic. And the notion being is that if sort of certain parts of our body are injured, we're never going to forget. And that's the idea of dhikr, that Allah is describing the Quran as a dhikra, that when He's telling us something, it should be the case that that thing that He's telling us, we shouldn't forget about it now. So that when He tells us something now which is away from that, that's a new bit of information that we should be striving to keep remembered, so we don't keep having to forget. But that's the nature of Insan. They say that Insan comes from a word which indicates the sort of propensity to forget about things. And the scholars say that if it weren't for the fact that we forget things, it'd make it very difficult for us to actually function in life. The fact that we're going to die one day. Can you imagine if people are consciously walking around knowing that they're going to die in an unhealthy way? It's going to really make our functioning in the world a lot more difficult for us. Now, at one level, that's the highest place that a Muslim can get to, is that he constantly remembers death, but he remembers it in a good way. And so, when we speak about Ramadan, we see that in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions all of the verses that pertain to fasting, the rules of fasting, the secrets of fasting, the dispensations with regards to fasting. They are all mentioned in one place in Surah Al-Baqarah, beginning from verse 183. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-sayam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Now, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma says that any time that we hear this khitab in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, that should perk our ears. It should really call us to attention that Allah is addressing us. And what is He addressing us with? Kutiba alaykum as-sayam. Now, we know the word kitab in Arabic means a book. But of course, in this context, it means it's been prescribed for you. Something has been made obligatory for you. And what is that thing? As-sayam. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Just as it was made obligatory and prescribed for those who went before you. So first up, what it's telling us is that this sacred act of fasting is something which has been prescribed to Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's been prescribed to Musa alayhi salam. It's been prescribed to all of the prophets that came before us. And so we are now sharing, if you like, in the sanad. We always speak about this idea of sanad, an unbroken chain. Well, that's the most unbroken chain that you can get, because it goes back right down to the beginning of history, to Adam alayhi salam. It's something which we partake with all the prophets. And so, by telling us that, it's allowing us to share in a sacred bond of siyam. And so, if we look at some of the things that we find in the month of Ramadan, we have the notion of i'tikaf. And i'tikaf is that time where we literally come and shut down. That's the time to just seclude ourselves from the world. It's the time that we forget about those material sort of wants and desires that we have. What we notice about the modern world is that the modern world is in some ways built upon an idea of fear. It's built upon an idea that you're going to lose something. You're going to lose your job. You're going to not get a job. You're going to not get married. You're going to not have children. Going to maybe worry about where our provisions are going to come from, what's going to happen about my grades, for example. And so, or let's worry about those barbarians who are living in certain parts of the world. It's a fair complex. That's the only way that they can keep people functioning in societies that are very materialistic. You have to want this. You need this. You have to fear it. And the way they make you want it is not because you necessarily love it, because you have a fear of not having it. And what's going to happen if I don't have that thing? At the very least, I'm not going to be accepted amongst my peer group. But Ramadan is exactly that time that comes to tell us that put all of that to aside, because that's not tawakkul ala Allah. Tawakkul is having that beautiful ability to know that it's Allah and it's in Allah's hands, everything. Everything. And so when we enter the month of Ramadan, if we look at the ayah, it's incredible. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصَّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. What's the reason? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Because there is nothing that Allah tells us in the Quran except He gives us a reason for why He's asking us to do something. And so if you look at the idea of Sawm, fasting, it's telling us that there's a purpose for it. And the purpose for it is that we come to have taqwa. But let's look at this word, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Now, لَعَلَّ in Arabic has a number of many meanings. One of those meanings is that you will fast so that you come to have something. Or it can mean that you will fast and hopefully by the end of that time you will come to have result X, whatever that may be. So we have to take the first part of the ayah and put it in our context. What are we partaking in? We are partaking in a sacred bond that links us back to all of the prophets who came before. Having established that idea, and of course we have to speak about all the things that are involved in fasting, that's just by itself. But once we've established that part of the verse, then we have to look at that pivot. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ. And what's the result? تَتَّقُونَ. Now, if you look at the notion of taqwa, the notion of taqwa is one of the most foundational principles of our deen. And the idea of taqwa comes from a word in Arabic, wiqaya, to protect yourself from something. And in this context, it means to protect yourself for the sake of God. So why would it be that Allah is asking us that you fast so that you can come to be God conscious? You become aware of God. Because it's within the month of Ramadan that those desires which find the strongest expression in human beings are controlled. It's the one time that you know that you can tell your desires that I'm in charge. Because you know that you can't eat. You know that you cannot drink. You know that you cannot engage in marital relations. And that's just the start. And so if you were feeling hungry or you were wanting to drink something, you're conscious, aren't you? You're aware, I can't do that. There's something about Ramadan, just the act of it, the act of fasting, which is bringing you to attention. You cannot eat, you cannot drink. And so it's the one time that you are in charge of your own, of your heart. So the idea is that if it's the case that you have fasted in the month of Ramadan, as the Prophet ﷺ has told us, Man sama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, that anyone who fasts Ramadan really believing in what it's about, ihtisaban, he's making a conscious effort to know that this imsak, me holding back from food, there has to be a reason for it. Holding back from drink, holding back from desires, there has to be a reason for it. In other words, this 1 month of consciousness must translate into something, and that translation is taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And that's why personally, I mean, maybe others will translate it differently, but I always like the translation of taqwa as God consciousness. That if you've cultivated yourself throughout this month, the idea is that hopefully now, imanan wa ihtisaban, you've taken stock of what it means to fast, and so that the entirety of the year now, you're in that state of being conscious of God. In other words, you're moving into that realm now where you are in control of your own heart. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And as I said, to remove our beings from that state of fear that we find ourselves in. As the great poet said, "Kullu ma tahwahu mawjudun fi dhatillah." Everything that you desire. Hawa is a bad word in Arabic in many ways. It's used in a negative sense. Hawa, it's your caprice. But look at what the poet says. "Kullu ma tahwahu mawjudun fi dhatillah." Everything you desire, everything. And that's the nature of man. Why? Because if you look at man, what does he love? He loves beauty. When he sees beautiful things, he inclines towards them. Why? Because ultimately it's a manifestation of God. Inna Allaha jameel, yuhibbul jamal. Naam. When we see someone who's wealthy, we may think that there's something in there for me. We incline towards those people who have wealth. We try to position ourselves with those people. Why? Because ultimately it's an attribute of God. Ghani. He's the one who doesn't need anything. That's why you call a ghani in Arabic, a rich person, ghani. Why? The idea being that he doesn't need anything. Or he wants for less or little because he has the means to get it. But why? It's an attribute of Allah. When we see people of power and authority, politicians for example, we know politicians have a haybar about them. There's a way about them, you feel it, because they're exercising authority on people. Why? Why do we have that inclination towards that? Because it's an attribute of Allah, Qudra and Sultan. So the amazing thing about all of these things that man desires is that whether you know it or you don't know, everyone is running to God. Either consciously by going to Him, or either subconsciously by looking at those manifestations of those attributes in creation and trying to take parts of it. So our souls are absolutely comported to the idea of God and the idea that the attributes of God represent in our lives. Now, and so Imam Razi says about this ayah, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that fasting has been prescribed for you so that you can be of the muttaqeen. Because the muttaqeen are a group of people that are so highly praised in the book of Allah. And so he's saying that this is what the ayah means. So you can be now, or this is your means to become one of those people. But what is taqwa? And what are the virtues of having taqwa? We see in the Quran many instances of the word taqwa and it being related to certain forms of blessing that Allah has promised the muttaqeen. For example, in the Quran, Allah mentions that those who have taqwa will have guidance. Huda lil muttaqeen. So those people who are conscious of God, they're going to get guidance from Him as well. He mentions that those people who have taqwa, they will have God's protection. Wallahu waliyul muttaqeen. Allah is the wali. He's a protector of the muttaqeen. That's why if you look at the definition of a wali in Arabic, it's man yatawallallahu umurahu. The one whom Allah has taken over his affairs. He doesn't even, you'll see when you meet pious people and people of God, it's incredible how their affairs are just facilitated. I think that can't be right. How can that be? And you'll see it with pious people. It happens again and again and again. It can only be one thing, that they've entered into the stations of wilayah. And because they're in that station of wilayah, Allah has taken over their affairs for them now. Don't worry about it. So that's why oftentimes you'll see people, they think, how did you get by? Or how did you manage to do that? Or, a number of things such as that. And it's simple because they are people who have forgotten about what it means to worry about those things. Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran also tells us that anyone who has taqwa, it engenders God's love for them. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. That Allah loves those people who are consciously aware of Him. How can it not be? It's the highest station. If you like, if you see sort of the Quran and the Hadith literature as one, it's a unified body. It's not bits. If you're going to read Hadith decontextualized, you're not really going to understand it. For example, I mean, you have that Hadith in the Arba'in Imam Nawawi, we were speaking about this recently. أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله. Now, someone who just opens up a book of Hadith will read what it says, that I've been commanded by God to fight people until they say La ilaha illallah. So someone who's reading that Hadith, that's what we have to do. We have to fight people until they say La ilaha illallah. But the ulama, they agreed, this Hadith, the outward meaning of the Hadith is not what it means. And there's a pivot again, like it is in this ayah, لَعَلَّكُمْ, giving us a reason, that the word hatta gives us a reason. Hatta in Arabic means many things. We know Sibawayh, the great grammarian, what did he say? Amutu wa fi qalbi shay'un min hatta. I'm in the throes of death, and I still have something in my heart about hatta. Just can't figure it out. In other words, it's complicated. And so, in this hadith, where it says, Umirtu an uqatil an-nasa hatta, it can have a number of meanings, one of which is ila an, until people say La ilaha illallah. But the way how the ulama understand it is that they say the hatta here means likay, i.e., that when we fight, and if there's a legal case for us to fight someone, because this hadith needs to be given over to the fuqaha, the legal scholars need to look at this hadith and understand it, and say, okay, can we, just as you do now, is there a legal case for war? If there is a legal case for war, then this hatta is now to be understood with the meaning that if we fight and there's a legal case for us to fight, the only reason why we fight when we do fight is so that people can say La ilaha illallah. It's not to say that we're only going to fight people until they say La ilaha illallah. You see the difference in meaning? Completely different. And that also, we need to bring in the understanding of what's called a dhimmi. So we have to take the Quran and the hadith as sort of one big corpus of meaning. And so the muttaqeen, the awliya, and all these people are being spoken about, this is nothing other than hadith Jibreel. Mal ihsan. What is it? What is ihsan? What is that highest rank of one's faith? أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That you are, what does it mean? You're consciously aware of Him. You're aware of Him to the point that you know that everything that you do, He's watching you. That's exactly it. Taqwa, ihsan. So anyone who has any issues about istilahat, about tasawwuf and what it may be and may not be, but it's right this. Muttaqeen, they are the awliya, they are the quote unquote, if you want to say in modern parlance or the words that we use now, Sufis if you like. You can call it whatever you like. It's the same thing. That's why in the early days they would say that tasawwuf never had a name, had a reality. But now we have a name for it, but no reality. We have just bickering, arguing about is it not, who is, who isn't. No, it's part of our deen. Even though who quote unquote reject this notion, they just reject the word of it. The reality of it, everyone accepts. Because it's in the Quran. Tazkiyatun nufus, purifying ourselves. And that's Ramadan. It's part of Ramadan to purify ourselves. And then the Quran tells us about those people who have taqwa. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Those people who have taqwa, Allah will make a way out for them. يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. That's it. You'll see it again and again. Those people who just, look at the Sahaba. Did Allah not make a way out for them? If you look at the great companions and those who came after them, Allah continuously makes a way out. But He gives a condition, مَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. But not only is He going to make a way out for you, يَرَزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. He is going to provide for you from avenues that you're not even going to understand where it's coming from. يَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. I remember Shaykh Faiz, when he came back from Tarim, he said to me, he told me stories about how, in fact, he used a statement. He said, you're going to see wondrous things taking place. That's his explanation, if you like, of يَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Wondrous things. To the point that wonder becomes life. That you actually becomes the norm now. You don't look at it any other way. Naam. And Imam Razi, radiyallahu anhu, one of the great Imams of our deen, has an incredible tafsir. He says that one of the rational proofs for fasting being an obligatory act is that it's meant to keep you away from sin. And so anything that's meant to prevent you from sinning, it must be understood as an obligation. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. The same is said about the prayer. That the prayer is what it stops you, it prevents you from committing any indecency or involving yourself in anything which is unbecoming of us as Muslims. In other words, that's why the awliya, and if you see the great people of Allah, they don't advise people of what to do and what not to do apart from what Allah has told them to do. Because they know as long as someone's praying and they're doing it properly, yeah, khalas, they'll get it done. And if I was going to say one thing in terms of sort of, because ad-din nasiha, ad-dinu an-nasiha. The deen is about really giving counsel to people. And if I could just say one thing about that if anyone ever comes to you seeking counsel for something, and they come to you with their problems, one piece of advice I would give you, if I may, and that's don't try to solve their problems. You'll do yourself a big favor. Just give them a shoulder to lean on. That's it. Let them talk it out with you. Because it's incredible how people have the capacity to work things out. But if you're gonna really now, man, I need to solve this guy's problem, or I need to solve this person's problem, that's where you're gonna get yourself into trouble. Because A, you may not have the ability to solve it. So you can actually make it worse for them by telling them what to do. But if you just nurture them, guide them, and we have many, many stories of this. Someone came to one of the great awliya in Sham and said, I'm going to pray, but I'm only going to pray one prayer a day. Dhuhr. That's it. I said, okay, no problem. Now, can you imagine if you had said to him, no, there's five prayers a day, and you have to pray all of them, and there's no point in you praying if you don't pray the 5. Now he said, look, just pray one then. And so his students said to him, look, how can you say that to him? He said, I'm not telling him not to pray the others. I'm just telling him to pray what you're saying you're going to, but be honest in it. If you say you're going to pray one, make sure you pray it. And he knew what's going to happen from that, and it did. 1 led to 2, 2 led to 3, 3 led to 4, and then 4 led to 5. You see? It's just about making it easy. And the thing about these ayahs of Ramadan is that what does Allah say right at the end? يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَى. He just wants ease for you. وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَى. He doesn't want to make things difficult for you. So why should we be doing that? If Rabbul Izzah, Khaliq, Bari, if he doesn't want to make things difficult for us, then who are we to make things difficult for people? We should be facilitators for ease. What's the easiest way out that we can have for people? Not, look, the sister's hijab's kind of coming off a little bit, you can see some hair coming out, that kind of stuff. Or, why your trousers not all the way up above your ankles, This munaffir, these things which chase people away from the deen. Allahumma la taj'alna musibatan lilladhina kafaru. Do not make us the barrier for people to become Muslim. Why would the Prophet ﷺ make that dua if there wasn't a meaning to it? Allahumma la taj'alna musibatan fitnatan lilladhina kafaru. We are the barrier for people becoming a Muslim. Nothing else. Allahumma la taj'al fi qulubina ghilla lilladhina amanu. And don't put any form of rancor in our hearts for those who believe. That's the nature of a Muslim. That we should be people of facilitation and ease. Naam. And so, then Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the next verse, Ayyam ma'dudat. That don't worry. It's only a few days. Immediately after mentioning that, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصَّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that you attain the level of God consciousness. أَيَّامٌ مَعْدُودَاتٍ. Don't worry. It's just a few days. Hang in there. Because if you do, look what you're going to get. Look at how Allah speaks to us. There's a tadabbur Quran. You know tadabbur in Arabic? It means, dubur in Arabic is your back. And tadabbur is to follow something through to its end. And that's why when they say about the Quran, they say tadabbaru. Reflect on it, i.e., don't just read it, go from the beginning and follow it right the way to the end. See what it means. Look at the links between the ayat. What is it Allah's trying to tell us? And it's exactly what He's saying. It's just a little bit. And that's the nature of the dunya, and that's the nature of Allah. Shall I tell you why? Because look at the world. An absolutely limited, finite thing. But what it demands from us is an infinite number of things. But look at Allah, the infinite, but demands from us, rather, just asks us to do a very limited number of things. For which, Jannat. There's not even a trade-off, if you like. Finite thing, the dunya, infinite demands. Infinite, the infinite. Al-Baqi, Al-Qadim. But very limited. Just remember me in the morning, and remember me in the evening, and I'll suffice you for what's in the day. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you don't pray during the day, but it means that those who are strong enough to wake up for Fajr, and those who are strong enough to wait until the late hours to pray Isha, do you think they're going to miss what's in the day? Because He's now facilitating it for you. Remember me in the morning, remember me in the evening, I'll suffice you for what's in the day. In other words, you're not going to miss it, I guarantee you that. That's the trade-off. That even when we're coming to Him in this limited number of things that He's asked of us, what is He telling us? You come to me one step, I'll come to you 10 steps. You come to me walking, I'll come to you running. You remember me in the morning, a little bit in the evening, I'll suffice you for what's in the middle. So even there He's helping us out. And even in Ramadan He's helping us out. فَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرْضَى أَوْ مَرِيبًا. Is there anyone amongst you who's not well? Or ala safar, or if they're traveling, no, don't worry about it. You don't have to fast. Just make them up. Make them up. So this sacred act that He's asking of us, at the same time He's telling us, but if you're sick, or if you're on a journey, there's even an opinion, Imam Razi mentions, he actually quotes Ibn Sirin, one of the great Salaf, that someone went to visit him in his house in Ramadan, and he was eating. And so they said to him, why are you eating? He said, I'm not well. They said, what's wrong with you? He said, I cut my finger. Now, the Jumhur of the ulama don't accept that opinion. But the point is that it just says it's that someone who's not well. Now, there's conditions for that, of course. We know the fuqaha then developed understandings and brought out what it means. But here's someone who's considered to be an important figure in our deen, and look how he understood that. Why? Because he knows that Allah wants ease for you, doesn't want difficulty for you. Naam. Don't take that opinion, of course. Just in case you go away and say that we heard it in class. Naam. And so then Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. That you fast, it's better for you. In kuntum ta'lamun. In other words, look at where it's coming in relation to the ayahs that came before it. This is what we're asking of you. This is what you're going to get if you do it properly. It's only a few days. But if you're not well and you're traveling, then yallah, no problem, don't fast. But remember one thing, don't just make it up. Because أَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. That you fast is better for you. If only you were to know that. And we're going to come on to, in just a moment, what that means. Naam. Then we have Allah Azza wa Jal mentioning, أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. That Shahru Ramadan, الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ, that the month of Ramadan, this is a month in which the Quran was revealed. Because we know that the Quran was revealed over a period of 23 years. And so the ulama, what they say is that the Quran came down from the Lawh al-Mahfuz down to the lowest heavens. And so that's the nuzul that Allah is speaking about. It's coming down from the Lawh al-Mahfuz down to the lowest heavens. And from there, it's being given to the Prophet ﷺ over a period of 23 years. Now this is incredible. Why? Because in that, there's a proof of the miraculous nature of the Quran. Why? Because if the Quran is eternal, which is our belief, the Quran is eternal. It's not something that Allah created and gave to the world. It's always been. It's speaking about real life events in the world. Right? But if you see how the Quran is being revealed, parts of certain chapters are being revealed at one stage, and then certain parts of other chapters are the next verses to be revealed. There's no chronology of the revelation of the Quran. So part of Baqarah will be revealed, part of Al-Imran will be revealed, and then part of Hud will be revealed, for example, and then back again to Baqarah. But not where it left off, an ayah way further down the surah. How can it be that these bits of revelation can then be put together almost like it was pre-planned? Because يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ السَّاعَةِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ Allah tells us that they're asking you about the hour. Naam. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, they ask you about Dhul Qarnayn. In other words, we know that the asbab al-nuzul of the Quran is that Allah is responding to certain events in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And in response to those events, we see that Allah is giving us those verses. And then those verses so symmetrically, just perfectly fit into each other. How can that be possible if it was from anyone other than Allah? No, it's mustahil. It cannot be. And that's what Allah tells us. Were it from anyone other than Allah, you would have found in it great fault. But there's nowhere. If someone's reading the Quran just for barakah, in a sense, they're reading it from beginning to end, you will never find a place where, these four were revealed first, and then these four, and then these four. As far as we know, it's just a one whole reading. You cannot tell where it stopped and where it began again. And that's a clear sign of the miraculous nature. For me, that's just one of the most powerful signs. That anyone has any doubt about the Quran, it's right there. There's your response. It cannot be that it was put together. Because you look at the Bible, the fact that it was changed by people, you can see that they can just plug it out right now. They spend decades they've been spending trying to figure out and trying to pull holes in the Quran in the Western sort of world. They can't do it. They've been able to do it with the Bible, and they've able to sort of narrow it down that we can only be sure of two words in the Bible that we can say actually probably Jesus said, and that's God and Amen. Right? So the Quran is not like that. And we should be very, very proud to be who we are, that we have a tradition which links us back مَعَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا, those who went before us. And fasting is one of those, it's that habal, isn't it? It's that rope that's been there, and we're just, alhamdulillah, the opportunity to hold on to it. Now, and so if we look at the word Ramadan itself, شهر Ramadan, الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, that the word Ramadan, according to Mujahid, the great Mufassir, student of Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, he said that the word Ramadan, it's a name of Allah. That Ramadan is Allah's name. And that the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, لا تقولوا جاء رمضان وذهب رمضان ولكن قولوا جاء شهر رمضان وذهب شهر رمضان فإن رمضان اسم من أسماء الله تعالى. For Ramadan is one of Allah's names. So don't say that Ramadan has come and Ramadan has gone, because it's like saying Allah has come and Allah has gone. لا. شهر رمضان جاء وشهر رمضان ذهب, that the month of fasting has come or the month of God, God's month, if you like, has come. Naam. Another opinion says that the word Ramadan, it's a name of a month, just like the months of Rajab and Sha'ban, for example. And on this opinion, they say that the word Ramadan is derived from a word in Arabic, Ramda, with a hamza at the end. And Ramda in Arabic is a type of rain. Ramda in Arabic is a type of rain that falls just before the autumn. And the reason why this rain had this particular name and what it means is that as autumn is about to come, this rain, it wipes away from the earth ghubar, all the dust that was on it, that's been settling over the summer. Because the summer months are dry months. And during the course of these dry months, you'll see that the earth would have collected a lot of dust. And this rain comes, and oftentimes when autumn arrives and it rains, you can smell the dust in the air. It's a really peculiar smell, isn't it? That's Ramda, that rain, that's doing that. And the reason why they say that it's been now applied to the month Ramadan is that just as this month has come, I beg your pardon, just as this type of rain comes to wipe away the dust that's accumulated over the summer, Ramadan comes to wipe away all of those sins that have accumulated throughout the year. Now, and then we have a third opinion, which is that the word Ramadan comes from the word Ramd, without a hamza at the end. And that Ramd in Arabic means is a name given to a stone which is burning hot. And it's been made to be that hot by the intense heat of the sun. And so the idea is that Ramadan is that month that scorches you. It scorches away your sins. All of, just as that stone, I mean, because of the ram that you can't even pick it up. It's become part of that stone, if you like. That Ramadan should become part of who you are. The intensity of this month, it's difficult to bear. The intensity of the sun, the heat. It's difficult, it's not easy. Try standing out in the summer months in Saudi, for example, you'll see how difficult it is. But you bear it if you have to. And that's Ramadan. The idea is that you accept that this month it should be difficult. It should be a month that's making us feel the pain and the pangs of hunger. Because if it's not, I mean, the idea behind Ramadan is that it's imsak, isn't it? I mean, someone showed me a message before we were coming on our way of a mother with a trolley. And the trolley sort of, it's bursting, it's so full, a shopping trolley in Sainsbury's. It's so full, things are falling out. And a small child says, "Mum, I thought fasting was a month that we're not meant to eat food." And that's the notion we have now. That in fact, Ramadan has become an evening buffet. It's a daily evening buffet now. That's what it is. And in fact, the preparation for Ramadan now isn't preparing ourselves for Ramadan, it's preparing the fridges and the freezers. Now, Imam Ghazali says in Ihya Ulumuddin, he says that in this month, يُؤْكُلُ مَا لَا يُؤْكُلْ فِي عِدَّةِ أَشْهُرٍ. The types of food that people eat in this month, they wouldn't ordinarily eat them in other months. It's a month of feast. I mean, the companions would say, make dua that Ballighna Ramadan. When the month of Ramadan would come to an end, they would just make dua that we need to get to it again. Why? Because they know it's a preparation of our hearts and our states. But really, we can see where we are, that if Ramadan is about preparing, it is, but about preparing the freezer. I know there's people who buy another extra freezers for Ramadan. I mean, I know we can laugh at it, but it's sad. It is sad. That it's an evening buffet, every evening. And Imam Ghazali said that Ramadan, for iftar, you should eat exactly that food that you would have eaten outside of Ramadan on that particular evening. So if Monday is a dal day for you, for example, I don't know if Muslims, Asians eat dal anymore, because we become sort of carnivorous in our desires for meat now. We complain about chicken prices and we complain about halalness of chicken. We forget it's because it's our desires that's making it like that. If we didn't eat so much meat, we wouldn't have to worry about it. And so if it's the case that Monday was a vegetable day, then Monday should remain a vegetable day. And if Tuesday was something else, it should remain. If you had one day a week, Jum'ah for example, that it was a treat day for you in terms of your food, khalas, have that as a treat day. Or if you're inviting guests to your house, honor them and give them a full spread of food if you like. Naam. But it shouldn't be a month that, as Imam Ghazali says, that you have alwanul at'ima, various types of food that find themselves on our table every single night. Naam. And so, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
So is it wrong to have iftar parties also?
No, you can have iftar parties if you're inviting other people, not yourself. But yani, don't have the party and that's all your month is about. Feeding people in Ramadan should be seen as a way of getting reward. Not of missing Taraweeh, for example. Not of eating so much that you can't wake up in the morning, right? Meaning it should be done for a reason. Yeah, you should invite people to your house. But if you're someone who can do it with a lot of discipline, yeah, of course. But if it's a case of a free-for-all, like I say, an evening buffet, naam. And so the act of fasting, we know that Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, and he mentions this about fasting in particular, that as-sawmu li, he mentions this about sawm, that fasting is for me, which in one way you'd think that's a strange way to say something about an act of worship when we know that all of our acts of worship are for God. So why single out Ramadan and fasting for God? As-sawmu li, fasting is for me. And the reason why that it's said that in those terms, the scholars say, is because on the Day of Judgment, when the judgment has started, and now the transaction begins with deeds. There's no currency on that day, or there is. The currency is your deeds, and that those people who have wronged others have to give of their deeds. Until if they have no good deeds left, that they take from the bad deeds of the ones that they've wronged. And we ask Allah to protect us from that. And to allow us, inshallah, into Jannah without hisab. And so, they say that there's a setting on that day where someone is giving their good deeds to somebody. And he has nothing left to give. And the person who was wronged by this person says to Allah, but I can see that he has a group of deeds over there. Why can't I take from them? And Allah responds by saying that, those are the deeds for fasting. They're ring-fenced. No one touches them. That's what it means by as-sawmu li, fasting is for me. Because we know fasting has no reward that's written down. All Allah tells the angels is just write it. The fact that he fasted, its reward is on me. There's no sort of 10 deeds or 700 deeds. La, there's nothing. It's beyond taqwa, if you like. We can't even enumerate it. And so, once all of this is finalized for this particular person, that his all these transactions that are taking place now, and giving and taking of deeds, then at the end, those ring-fenced deeds come into play. And they're brought forward. And now Allah starts enumerating them and multiplies them. 700, 7,000, 70,000, 700,000, to whatever Allah wills. And those deeds are what takes him into paradise. He was bankrupt. He had nothing left. But he had something which was ring-fenced completely. That's what it means by Sawmuli. The second thing is that fasting is the most godlike thing that you can do. Because there's a hadith which says, تَخَلُّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Become people who adopt those magnificent qualities that are by right only God's. And so if you look at God, if you look at Allah Azza wa Jal, does he need food? No. Does he need drink? No. Does he desire for anything? No. So fasting is that most godlike, the most godlike that a human being can be. That's why it's so sacred. Because you're repelling away from you something which is part of your bashariyah and moving towards something which is more godlike. Of course, not in any anthropomorphic sense, no, hasha. But that's what they say. It's one of those things which allows us to move closer to God by becoming those people who adorn ourselves with the qualities of God. Naam. And we also know that one of the greatest victories that was given to the Muslims was when? When? 17th of Ramadan. 17th of Ramadan. That's why some of the ulama, they say that Laylatul Qadr is the 17th of Ramadan because of Badr. This is that one defining moment in our history where the Prophet ﷺ says in his dua to Allah before the Battle of Badr that, Ya Rab, if this small band of men perishes today, you will never be worshipped on this earth again. 313 people, 313 against what they saw. 3 times the size of them. They say that they had one horse, say the Miqdad, that's it. 1 horse between them. 313 people. They barely had swords. One of the companions, his sword it broke and he just picked up a stick. And the Prophet said to him, fight with that. Look at Ramadan. They were fasting. Imagine that. 17th of Ramadan. An incredible, momentous moment in our history. And that if you see those sort of most important days, you'll see how they're linked to Ramadan. The Quran is revealed in Ramadan. This battle, look at it. It takes place in Ramadan. When is Laylatul Qadr? It's in Ramadan. Khayrun min alfi shahr. What is it now? We've calculated it as well. It's 83.3 years. I mean, you get 50 of those in your lifetime. I mean, my God. Just for one night's worth of work. I mean, we're mercantile as human beings. We have a mercantile nature. We like to trade. And that's why Allah gives us these numbers. 1,000 months, one night's work. You know, that's what we like. We have to think in numbers. That's why it's important for us to remember that the way to worship Allah is not like a laborer, expecting your wages at the end of the day. The way to worship Allah is to worship Him because of who He is. And I've mentioned this before, and that's why they mention the story of Layla wa Majnoon. Because the point that they're trying to make about Majnoon is that he's in pain because of how much he loves Layla. He's in pain. But why does he put himself through that? Layla's not giving him anything back. But he loves her because she's Layla. That's why they mention that story. It's not a romantic story. There's a point to it, and that's the point. That how many of us can truly worship Allah by saying that we worship you because you are Rabb. We don't worship you because you are telling us about paradise. The awliya, they say that to not be with him in paradise is hell. They're in paradise, but not with him. To not be with the Prophet in paradise, that's hell. Forget nar. They say that the awliya, they say the only reason why they desire to be in paradise in the first place is because they know that the Prophet is there. They know that that's his neighborhood. They have no other desire. As we know, the great waliya, Rabi Adawiyya, what does she say? That if I worship you, Allah, for paradise, then don't give it to me. And if I worship you because I fear hell, then put me in it. But if I worship you for who you are, just because you're Rabb, because you have the right to be worshipped, then don't deprive me. That's ubudiyah, true ubudiyah. Don't ask questions. That's what the hadith in Arba'in is so interesting, isn't it? Right? That إِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ كَثْرَةُ مَسَائِلِهِمْ. That what was the reason for the demise of the people who came before us? Just too many questions. Too many questions. We want to ask too many questions and hear too many answers. But if it was the case that we were actually engaging our hearts and our beings and ourselves, there's no need to ask any question. Really. Because if you read the Quran, we read the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, his seerah, right? And we can do like a pot survey right now of people, and include me in that as well. How many people read seerah every single week? I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up, but we know we're, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. That man knows himself, don't worry, even though he may give his excuses, as Allah tells us in Surah Qiyamah. He knows himself, but he gives it, but I was busy, but I was this. Now, how many of us actually engage the seerah every single week? Ideally, every single day. The first thing that we should read and should be our sort of quote unquote this fad that we have now is reading lists. That's it. Why should we want to know about anyone else if we don't know about him, sallallahu? There's people who I know who know more about the Prophet sallallahu and his relations than they do about their own families, about his aunts and uncles and about his tribes and who he was related to via different tribes. They know all about that. They don't even know about their own families. So how can it be then that we're asking ourselves this question, that why do we find ourselves in this predicament that we're in the modern world? There you go. The more that you lose sight of him, the more you lose sight of who you are. Because he is our entire value system is him. And if we don't, because we live our lives according to values. And if we don't know what those values are, how can we live a life? And if we don't know him, how can we know what our value system is and what stems forth from us? That at the very least, if we can't even move ourselves to read about him now, tabarakallah, and we even have YouTube, we can listen to his seerah. Right? It should be something which is part of our daily routine, to want to learn about him, to want to know about him. Why is it that this... Think about it. Why do we have the Shama'il? Did they need to record in hadith? They were with him. They're dreaming about him. That internal voice that everyone has, it was just talking to them about him, the companions. Why would they want to record the hadith about him? Because they knew that this is a way to preserve it for those who come after us. But the people who are attached, I remember one of my teachers in Sham, and I asked him, I said, look, can we study some Shama'il with you someday? And no jest. He closed his eyes and he just started describing that as it was in the Shama'il. And I realized from him that it's not about the book. It's about him being with you all the time. I mean, I remember I phoned Shaykh a little while ago, and I asked him something, and I always phoned him up to rant about things. And he said to me, and I the sort of statements that you always cherish. And he said, look, when things get hard, just close your eyes and think of Mustafa. And I just took it away, and I really thought about that, and I did. Just think of, and wallahi, I'm telling you, and don't take an oath lightly. When you think about him, every problem disappears. Everything. Just thinking about him. Because you know that Allah tells us in the Quran that harisun alaykum bil mu'minina ra'ufur rahim. That he's concerned about you. Harisun alaykum. He's concerned about you. What bothers you bothers him. Bil mu'minina ra'ufur rahim. Look at the mercy that he has with the believers. That you were just doing the translation of that. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. What does that mean? That Allah is telling him on a day of judgment that I'm going to give you, and you know, everyone who does Arabic in this class knows that the verb in Arabic, أعطى يعطي, is a doubly transitive verb. It takes two objects, two maf'ul bihis. Everyone knows that who does Arabic. And so Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ that He's going to give you. He didn't say what He's going to give him. There's a verse in the Quran, or as it's rendered in the Mawlid. Does it say what He's going to give him? وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. It doesn't say what He's going to give him. And so there's a group of people who were sitting around in a masjid one day, and they were sort of discussing which is the ayah in the Quran that gives believers the most hope. And they saw the great Junaid Baghdadi, Imam Ta'ifatain, the great Imam of this ummah. And they said, well, let's go to Junaid. He'll tell us what the ayah that gives us the most hope. And he mentioned this ayah, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And why? Because they say that when you have an object which has been elided, it's missing, Allah hasn't mentioned it, the principle in grammar is that when you reinsert it, and we're not talking about reinserting in the Quran, in meaning in our minds, it has to be something which is the most general thing that you can think about. And so what they say is that the ayah is telling us is that وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَتَرْضَى. Allah will give you everything until you are pleased. And they say that the Prophet ﷺ will never be pleased until every one of his ummah is in paradise. Arja ayah fil Quran. There's not a single ayah in the Quran that gives Muslims and the believers more hope than that ayah. Naam. And so there's a lot more that we can add, and this is just as Shaykh Faiz said, a reminder first and foremost, tadhakkur wa tadhkir. It's interesting that in Imam al-Haddad's prayer of intention, he mentions tadhakkur and then tadhkir, because tadhakkur is reflexive. It's about reminding yourself first, and then tadhkir, to remind others. So inshallah, this is a small reminder about a month, which ultimately is about practicality. And we can speak until, Ramadan, the month of Ramadan comes and goes. But it's about actually sort of rolling our sleeves up, if you like, and feeling the difficulty of this month, and feeling the longing to want to be. We know there's a palpable blessing in this month, we know that. But let that palpable blessing be something which doesn't revolve around food or drink or vain talk. And there's an entire section which I've missed out, which was Imam Ghazali in the Ihya mentions the way to a complete fast. And any of you who read Arabic can go back and read that, and any of you who don't can ask Shaykh Faiz to go through it with them. It's a couple of pages only. And so, inshallah, we ask Allah to facilitate it for us, because as the ayah, as the verses that speak about fasting, they tell us, that He wants ease for you and doesn't want hardship for you. But He also tells us that inni mujib qaribu da'wata da'i idha da'ani, that I am close to the one who calls on me. I'm going to respond to him. In other words, look at the relationship between this ayah and the hadith in the Arba'in of Imam Nawawi. ثم ذكر الرجل يطيل السفر أشعث أغبر يمد يديه إلى السماء, that the Prophet ﷺ makes mention of a man who's on a journey. He's dust covered, disheveled, tired, i.e. all reasons why his dua should be answered. وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَلْبَسُهُ حَرَامٌ وَغُذِيَ بِالْحَرَامِ فَأَنَّ يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ, that his food is haram, his drink is haram, his clothes are haram, he was nourished on haram. Where does he think he's going to be replied? So the idea is that if you look at the link, that's what I mean. It needs to be seen as a whole. That Ramadan, the time that you have distance from food, and look at the ayah that comes right at the end. Inni qareeb, I'm near. Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'an. I respond to the one who calls upon me when he calls upon me. That's what it tells us. In other words, these are the asbab of qabul and qurb. to Allah. So inshallah we ask Allah to make it easy for us, facilitate it for all of us. Make dua for me inshallah as well, that Allah makes this a blessed and easy, difficult month for us. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.